Good morning. In honor of Black History Month, please rise in body or spirit and join together in singing hymn 169, We Shall Overcome.
Please join me as we have the chalice lit. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together we care for the church and each other. Good morning. We welcome you here today. My name is Glasscott, and I will be serving as worship associate for Reverend Alice. We know you come to St. John's for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and your soul, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and to perhaps give comfort. Unitarian Universalists affirm unconditional love as a foundation and grounding for all of our actions in this world. We strive to be of service to our communities and advocate for change on all levels: local, state, national, global. But the change, the real transformation, must begin within ourselves. We face great challenges here at St. John's. But most of us come here to learn more about being in relationships together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, how to create trust, understanding, and compassion in one another. I welcome you here this morning, and I also ask that you consider reading the New York Times recently published bestseller book. It's titled Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Siad. It is a book that challenges white people to take action and dismantle the privilege within ourselves, to stop inflicting damage and hurt on people, and in turn help other white people do better too.
Please rise in body or spirit. We're now going to sing There Is Love, which is not in the hymnal, but the words are up here.
Please join in our words, our affirmation words we say every week. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. I invite you to come forward if you wish to place a stone in our bowl of sand that represents a joy or a concern that you may have. If you would like something publicly shared, please write it down and bring it up. Or if you're watching at home, please write it in the chat. We'll do our best to capture those. Gay lights our flame, that we may carry this community feeling of support for one another in our joys and our sorrows forward as we move through the day. And our story is next.
Good morning. This morning we have some hands-on things, so if the kids want to come up to the BMO we have things to touch. So there's a bunch of stuff in the bag, so you can just hand them out, Meredith. My name is Ashley Rhodes, and I am in charge of our children's programming here and today we're going to talk about change. So the service today is about change. And when people think about change, a lot of times they think about technology. So what we have is some technology that I don't know. Do you know what that is, Juliana? What's in your hands? She said not really. She does not. That's not a CD. That's a DVD, which I don't know the difference to you all. It's maybe not important. It used to be important.
The case looks the same. I didn't
Okay.
see the thing. The case just looks the same.
And
They're even older.
do you even know what that is?
No.
So funny, I was looking for stuff for this, and I found some VHS that I have saved because they are of me. Like me from high school, and my kids are really excited, and they were like, oh, can we see that? And I was like, we don't even have a VHS player in the house. I don't know. So,
Hi.
hi. What else? We got CDs up here. We have DVDs. So things have changed a lot very quickly in terms of the technology that we use. What do we use? What do we use? What do we use DVDs for? What are those?
We don't really use DVDs.
But I mean, what's on there?
Oh. It's like a movie.
A movie. Do we still watch movies?
Yeah, but instead of having a DVD, we have a TV where we can just go to Netflix.
We just go to
Disney
Netflix.
Plus.
We just go to Netflix or Disney Plus. So we're still watching movies. We still like movies. And even before we had like movies, we had plays and we had, performances. So those things that have always been true. And my daughter pointed out we had books. And we have CDs up here. And before we had CDs, we had cassettes, which I remember, but I couldn't find one. And, before cassettes, there were records, and before that, we had, live performance, which we still have. Amelia, do you know what that is? It's a floppy disk, which I actually found one of those. Again, I don't know that there's anything in the building that can use that. But what do you use that for, Amelia? Saving stuff, yeah. So where do we save stuff now? If you need to save information.
Your phone.
Your phone, your computer, the cloud, right? Google Docs. Sit down. Amelia just said that seems way more fun, which I think you're wrong, Amelia. As somebody who had to use them, I definitely prefer the cloud. Okay, so point being, we still need to save information. We've always had to save information, but the technology has changed. Now, your timing is perfect, Meredith.
Oh, okay.
What is that?
It's a map.
It's a map.
You don't need a map anymore. You just need your phone.
She stole my line. Okay,
You do not need an old-timey map anymore.
we don't need old-timey maps anymore.
We don't.
What do we use?
We literally use this map. GPS.
See that?
What? GPS.
Yes, exactly. So I don't even need to ask the questions. They know where we're going with this. Okay.
Yeah.
So
We know everything.
they know everything. So
We know everything.
the reason that we're talking about this today is because we're talking about a slightly different kind of technology today, which is something our Article 2, which is a big fancy name for something I know you all have heard of, which is the principles. Does that sound familiar? The UU principles? Doesn't sound familiar to you. And the funny thing, I remember the principles when I was a child UU, and often the way we teach those to kids is as if like they've been around forever. Like when I learned them in the 90s, it was like, well, this is just, they just exist, But the reality is that they were, only been around since 1961, and the last time they were changed was in 1985, which I was alive then, and many of you will remind me I'm not that old. So the thing is that those are a kind of technology. Sometimes we think we forget that words are tools too, and sometimes we want to work on the words that we use as our tools or as our maps. So we're going through an update to Article 2, and I don't know where my piece of paper went. So instead of principles, we're talking about values now, which is a different word, but we're still trying to kind of point a map to, we're using values because we think that's a better map maybe to the way things are and the things underneath, I think, that we're trying to talk about, and also maybe a better tool to get us where we want to go. And there's 7 new values, which I don't have memorized, which I never memorized the principles either. I don't know where my list went. But anyway, there's 7 of them. I'm sure Reverend Alice will tell you. She nodded. But the point being is that it's sometimes one of the best things about being Unitarian Universalist is that we try to really openly recognize that sometimes we want to change our tools because the different tools will get us where we need to go a little bit better. So sometimes using the map on my phone is a little bit more effective for where we want to go than using a big paper road map, which I also remember from being a child. Of course.
I think we have one.
There are some things that the road maps.
Road atlas.
There are some things that road atlases are fun for. Yeah.
Yeah, when we went on our trip, I pretty much tracked where we were
Yep.
the entire time.
Yep. Sometimes old tools are useful too. So I don't expect that the old stuff will disappear completely. But when they interrupt me, sometimes I lose my train of thought. That's all. But anyway, we're going to talk about that a little bit downstairs, and I know that's what you all are going to talk about up here. It's just that maybe we're going to start using a slightly different tool most of the time, and that'll get us where we need to go a little bit more effectively. All right, guys, we're going to go downstairs, and we're going to take all of our tools, our obsolete tools, with us.
Can we turn on the radio? Can we go down there?
Yes, we can. Okay. So you're carrying the map. We are working together. We're going to take all our tools with us, and we're going to take the flame with us. Thank you.
Hi. Alice talked to me. I smelled it and I got it.
Thank you.
You messing up my bun?
Will you join me, please, for a prayer or meditation? Living Spirit that moves within us and among us, our hearts come together filled with abundant love. There are concerns in our community. Kathy Rack says her sister-in-law, Kim Hoffert, is continuing chemotherapy, asks for your thoughts. Our member Nikki Orleman had a stroke on Wednesday, and she's at the UC hospital. Please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Many of us are faced with changes in our lives. We don't always understand them, and even when we do, they create turmoil. May we hold each other in love, never knowing what might be going on in someone's heart. We also turn our attention to the wider world, the death and destruction in Turkey and Syria from the earthquakes, and the unnecessary death and destruction in Ukraine and the other conflict zones in the world. We also hold each other in the joys we face, the celebrations of life, the births, the healing, and the recognition that we can be a community of love. May it be so. Amen. I'd like to invite Ann Septic forward.
Good morning. I would like to introduce Patty Lee this morning. She's a representative, she's the Chief Advancement Officer for Community Matters, and they are our Split the Plate recipient this month of February. So Community Matters assists residents within the Lower Price Hill neighborhood, and I will turn it over to Patty now. She can tell you a little bit more about her organization and the good work that they do.
I'm short, I'm sorry, I'll move this just slightly closer. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to share just a little bit about Community Matters work with you all. As Ann said, Community Matters is rooted in the Lower Price Hill neighborhood, and our work has existed there for more than 50 years now. But the most of the growth in what we're doing in Lower Price Hill has really happened in the last 10 years and happened pretty rapidly. A lot of people see our community in Lower Price Hill for what they lack. And those things, many of them are real, but it's the symptom of disinvestment, of generational poverty, of gentrification, of all of the things that we've seen over the years that have impacted our neighbors. And for us, we're committed to working alongside our neighbors to change those things. We view ourselves as a conduit for the reinvestment in our neighbors and for our neighbors and alongside our neighbors. That sounds nice. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? It looks like a lot of things. So we have everything from a food pantry and social workers on site that are partnering with families to help them become more stable, so working on housing and childcare and benefits and all sorts of things. We have 2 education-focused programs for adults. We have GED and college access. We have English classes for speakers of other languages. We have students in that program from more than 40 countries this year. including the Ukraine. So recent, asylum cases from the Ukraine are also joining us this year. We have probably the largest bucket of our work is in resident leadership because, again, everything we do is driven by the express needs of our neighbors, and we're partnering with them to build those things. And so resident leadership includes community gardens, an arts collective group that operates in the neighborhood that has a gallery space. It includes community events. It includes a team of neighbors who are paid to beautify the community and pick up litter. That resident-led work has a ginormous breadth, and we see it out in our community every day. And then the last part of that is what we call thriving community, but it's where we're investing in the people and places that make our neighborhood special. It includes the Washing Well Community Laundromat, which we developed a few years ago with neighbors because we found out that there was a need in our community, and we now see a lot of communities bringing this need to the forefront, the need for laundry access. The Washing Well is open and is led by neighbors every day. And then recently we embarked on affordable housing journey, and as many of you might know, there is a need citywide for affordable housing and for more housing in general. And so this month we welcomed, after 6-7 long years, we welcomed the first residents into new affordable housing that we've been developing with Over the Rhine Community Housing. And I think they've been here too and visited and spent some time with you all. And that has been really exciting. And so we get to welcome these new neighbors to our community over the coming months. And it's really special. It's been a long time coming. And there is more work around affordable housing on our horizon. But generally speaking, everything that's happening in Lower Price Hill is happening alongside our neighbors, in partnership with our neighbors, and we truly believe that's important. For many years, organizations would come in to Lower Price Hill and provide somewhat Band-Aid fixes, and then they would leave as funding and other, momentum changed. We are committed to being in Lower Price Hill long-term and to really working with our neighbors to build back the community. So I won't take too much more of your time, but I invite you, if you're interested in learning more about Lower Price Hill, about the work that Community Matters is doing, I invite you to come and spend some time with us. We give a great tour of the community, and you'll find out really quickly why Lower Price Hill is so special. You'll meet neighbors along the way. It is the friendliest community I've ever been a part of, except for maybe you all this morning, because I think almost everyone has said hi, for which I am grateful. But Lower Price Hill is very much that way. Sometimes you just walk down the street, and it takes you an hour to get to where you're going because you stop and have those conversations with people. And so it's really something special that I think a lot of people don't get to see firsthand. So I invite you to join us. And again, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here. And I think I'll stay around for coffee afterwards if anybody has more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The offering will now be gratefully received and generously given in support of this congregation and its work, as well as Community Matters.
Thank you. So beautiful as always. James Luther Adams was a Unitarian parish minister, social activist, journal editor, distinguished scholar, translator and editor of major German works, theologian, prolific author, and divinity school professor for more than 40 years. He was heavily influenced by his visits to Nazi Germany in the 1930s. Adams was one of the most influential theologians among American Unitarian Universalists of the 20th century. From James Luther Adams, The Five Smooth Stones of Liberalism, he wrote, "Religious liberalism depends first on the principle that revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured, nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism. At best, our symbols of communication are only reference and do not capsule reality. Events of word, deed, and nature are not sealed. They point always beyond themselves." And also by James Luther Adams, in The Church That Is Free, he wrote, "I call that church free which responds in responsibilities to the spirit that bloweth where it listeth. The tide of the Spirit finds utterance ever and again through a minority. It invites and engenders liberation from repression and exploitation, whether of nation or economic system, of race, sex, or class. It bursts through rigid cramping inheritance, giving rise to new language, to new forms of cooperation, to new and broader friendship. The Church of the Spirit is a pilgrim church on adventure."
Sometimes that 20th century language is a little bit hard, isn't it? But I like that idea from James Luther Adams that revelation is not sealed and that we have a responsibility to change our language with the times. Those are two ideas that, in my opinion, set us apart from other languages. We are truly a living tradition. We are at a point in our faith where we are on a bit of a pilgrimage, on an adventure. We're re-examining our language and how it might be cramping us. Instead, we look to new language, new forms of cooperation, and a new, broader fellowship. Now, you may think I'm talking about St. John's. After all, we are on a pilgrimage, but I am actually talking about Unitarian Universalism as a whole. We are examining our beloved principles and possibly recasting them, as Ashley pointed out this morning, in an entirely new way. When I mention this idea to people, they sometimes say, "What's wrong with our principles?" Well, it's easy to pretty much say nothing. I mean, maybe there is nothing wrong with them, but we've lived with them pretty much as is since 1985. For those of you who were alive then, Michael Jordan was Rookie of the Year. An enormous hole in the ozone was identified. Kind of closing up now. Ronald Reagan was president, and Gorbachev took over the Soviet Union, which still existed. The AIDS epidemic was growing fast. Gas was $1.29 a gallon, and the dot-com revolution began. And The Cosby Show got an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series. So think things haven't changed? In 38 years, we have seen a lot of change, and I'm especially aware of the role of the internet, the environment, the Me Too movement, race, and our understanding of LGBTQ+ rights in our faith and in our nation. These changes all have theological implications for us, and perhaps each one of those could be a sermon on its own. Our Unitarian Universalist founders saw the wisdom in James Luther Adams' concept of growing theological ideas, so they wrote it into our Unitarian Universalist Association Constitution. They basically say, we're going to review our principles every 15 years. Doesn't mean we're going to change them, but it means we're going to look at them, talk about them. And it'll take 2 years to do it, and it takes a 2/3 vote. We'll get into that, but it's a big deal. Now, what we're actually reviewing is called Article 2 of our bylaws, and that is more than just our principles. It might sound kind of legalistic, and I hope your eyes don't glaze over too quickly here, but there's a section of our bylaws, and it focuses on our statement of purpose, a statement of inclusion, a statement of freedom of belief, and a set of principles that includes our sources of inspiration. These are in the front of your hymnal. These are important statements of who we are, what we value, and what we covenant to do. It is an interesting move to put that in the bylaws with a mandated review clause, right? They're not carved on stone tablets, handed down from God. They're not a creed. They're not unchanging. They are a living document. It's not easy to change, but we must, according to our Constitution, every 15 years. So we have our own little Council of Nicaea going on right now. However, these decisions are not really made by association leaders, as it was in Nicaea. They are made by you, the people who are elected and approved by the Board of St. John's and all the other UU congregations to serve as delegates at our annual meeting known as General Assembly. Anyone can go to GA, and I recommend it if you get the chance. But delegates are the ones who vote on the business before the assembly. Like democracy everywhere, it isn't perfect. A little over 15 years ago, in the last review, the draft presented in the first year was rejected by the assembly flat out. People felt that the language, the new language, lost some of its poetry. So the study group that presented them back then felt like they were tinkering around the edges, wordsmithing or something like that, things that, that didn't take a whole look at the whole thing. What is it we want to do? What is it we want to say? So things stayed the same. But in the past few years, there's been a lot of change in our faith, as in the nation, and a couple of the principles started to be challenged by the congregations. The first principle, probably one of the hardest ones, right? It says, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all persons. That's been challenged. Some people say they want to change persons to beings. So that includes the larger environment. There's another group, it's called the Fifth Principle Group, that believes we're not living up to our democratic ideal. That principle reads, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. They say elites are deciding for us. Others argue that majoritarian democracy will never be able to move us beyond a white supremacy culture. How should we make decisions when the delegates tend to be older white people with leisure time? And finally, there's a significant movement to add an eighth principle, and many congregations have done so on their own. It reads, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This is all happening now. So all this tinkering around the edges that we did 15 years ago meant we did not move our faith statements that we used to guide us. And instead, we started doing this kind of piecemeal work. But this time, the commission that is selected by the board took a significantly different approach. And they have presented many, many opportunities to engage the ideas at the grassroots level. What if we reimagined it all? What if it was no longer a list of principles, but instead a set of values? What is our covenant to each other? How does this theology guide us? What if we took the theological concept of beloved community seriously? What if love was at the center of our values? Roberto has a slide for us. Yay. The cool thing about this graphic is that it shows the inseparability of the values surrounding the theology of love, the power of love, the centering of love. Thank you. Love goes back to our universalist roots. Universalism is the theology that God is all loving and would not damn anyone to hell for an eternity. Not anyone. Now, you may be able to think of someone who deserves to go to hell, if you believe in hell. But this theology asserts that our loving God would not do that. It's even biblical. In 1 John 4, chapter 4, 7 through 8, John wrote, "The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love." This theology gained a lot of strength in the 1500s during the Protestant Reformation. It was a significant time of reimagining. In the US, Universalism got its start in the 18th century when John Murray started preaching. And as we moved into the 19th and 20th centuries in the US, the phrase, "God is love," was a theological tagline used by the Universalists. "God is love" was carved across the front of my altar in an historically Universalist congregation in Jackson, Michigan. And I can remember being really struck by how important that concept was. Love. It's about relationships with each other and also with God. God is love puts God right there in relationships, the creator or the creative spirit that moves us. That's in our relationships. So putting love at the center, for me, puts relationships at the center. This whole notion of centering love resonates for me. It centers our Universalist theology. It centers beloved community. It gets us past rigid hierarchies and moves us toward interdependence. Gives us the opportunity to center voices that have been historically marginalized and encourages us to take different views into account in new ways, to be more inclusive. It's moving in the right direction when we include everyone in our decisions. But we are going beyond inclusion now to centering. And that's because in a democracy that uses a majority vote, those with minority identities don't have much of a chance numerically. How can we be more inclusive and manifest Universalist love in what we do, in our systems, in our institutions, in our UUA, and in our congregations? For example, I know a few of you have heard this story, but my home congregation in Dayton wanted to put a banner on the building that said, "People of Faith for Marriage Equality." This was back at the start of that movement. But a lot of the people in the congregation said, we don't want to put that up. That's going to target us. We're going to be, targeted in something that happened in Knoxville where there was a shooting, and so there was some fear. And why are we making political statements anyway? Well, some of the gay members in our congregation were really hurt that we were even debating their worth and dignity. Shouldn't it be obvious what we should do? Where was our courage? Well, it maybe should be obvious what we should do, but it wasn't necessarily to the comfortable majority with privileges that we don't always recognize. If I learned anything from these kinds of debates, it is that while the majority may be bright and thoughtful and have good ideas, if we're going to make decisions, we need to center the voices of those who are on the margins of decisions, who face the brunt of inequities and are most affected by the choices we make. Centering the voices of those affected ties justice to love in really important ways. Maybe Cornel West said it best when he said, "Justice is what love looks like in public." Inclusivity and centering are extraordinarily difficult on a systemic level. All the rules and the processes we have, right? It's making your eyes glaze over yet. Love and universalism at the center, that makes my eyes perk up and it makes my heart sing. We have to hold the both and of our vision that we have and the work we need to do to make it happen. Let's talk about targeted universalism. Say what? Isn't that an oxymoron, right? Universalism means everyone is equal and worthy, right? Well, we wish. Law professor John A. Powell, in his book Racing to Justice, coined the term targeted universalism to get past the trends in our nation toward colorblindness. Being colorblind means we don't see race, and therefore we're universally equal, right? Well, we know it doesn't work that way, not on a personal level and not on a systemic level. The first thing I notice about someone is often their race or their gender, and I get confused if I can't tell. This is really hard work that I've been trying to do on my own implicit biases. And that's the individual level. As a nation, we have a lot of policies that are supposed to help people, help everyone with a social safety net. But there are barriers and exclusions. So often, some policies help people and hurt others, include people and exclude others. And even though the barriers we create, the boundaries that exclude, that create haves and have-nots, are starting to be dismantled, they have been centuries in the making. They do not come down easily. The classic example is the GI Bill that provided educational benefits following World War II. It was a wonderful leveler for those white GIs. Those benefits did not go to black GIs. Who knew that a policy that was intended to lift people up left people out? John Powell refers to some of the policies that President Barack Obama tried to put in place, such as health care for all, universal kind of coverage. He did it as a two-step process, Powell writes. It was a two-step process, establishing universal first, and then targeting programs aimed at eliminating disparities. For example, in health care, it was made easily available for everyone. Universal. And then to target low-income people, he wanted to expand Medicaid so people could afford it. He added wellness checks as a required benefit because people without access to health care often miss out on expensive preventive care and instead rely on the emergency room. Universal care, targeted at needs and disparities. And of course, there was pushback. Powell wrote, "Although it is hard to argue with the truly universal benefits of broad access to essentials such as healthcare or education, even targeted universal programs can cause racial resentment. Such resentment does not simply represent racist attitudes. It also represents ambivalence and confusion. A more sophisticated understanding of our common yearnings for fairness and connectedness can help us learn how to greatly increase our potential to build a society we can all be proud to call home. That is love at the center. That is theology at work in the world, building a society and a faith we can all be proud of. We see the dismantling of barriers beginning to happen in the multiracial categories on our census forms, and the multigender, non-binary options on hospital intake records and other places. The world is waking up to the notion that we do not fit neatly into 2 boxes or 4 boxes. Things are fluid, changeable. Policies also need to recognize this fullness of humanity, of each human being, but do it in a way that targets those who have been historically left out. So when the UUA puts love at the center, surrounded by values of justice, equity, interdependence, and transformation, it is because they cannot be separated. It is targeted universalism. It is a part of our faith to create the world together. It is a vision of love. We need to pay attention to the changes in the world so our faith is appropriate for the times. Collective liberation and beloved community are terms we keep hearing from our faith leaders now. These are expansive visions that are aimed at a world that is more inclusive and just, not exclusive and narrow. When I live into that vision, I certainly feel the integrity of a life lived with love at the center. Women's rights activist and Black feminist Adrienne Marie Brown wrote this in her book, Emergent Strategies. When we are engaged in acts of love, we humans are at our best and most resilient. The love in romance makes us want to be better people. The love of children that makes us change our whole lives to meet their needs. The love of family that makes us drop everything to take care of them. The love of community that makes us work tirelessly with broken hearts. Perhaps humans' core function is love. Love leads us to observe in a much deeper way than any other emotion. She writes, if love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact. If the goal was to increase love rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through the eyes of love. She concludes, we would understand that the strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships, which could only be measured by their depth. She sounds universalist, doesn't she? I don't know if this new envisioning of our principles that I showed you and that you can hear about after the service today, I don't know if it's an improvement. I don't know if that graphic will be final. That's for us to decide together. And you can learn more by staying after the service. Joetta's leading a class in our fellowship hall. I do know that theological concepts like beloved community and universalism can be guiding lights for us in times fraught with hateful rhetoric and pushback against the rights of people historically marginalized by race and ethnicity, gender and sexual orientation, ability, or other identities. Keeping love at the center focuses our hearts and minds on an inclusive world, liberating all, not some. Can you imagine it? Imagine centering love while working for justice and equity. Imagine centering love with generosity and a sense of transformation. Imagine centering love in the spirit of pluralism and interdependence. Know that you have had a massive impact when you increase the love in the world. Amen. May it be so.
Invite the choir up.
Thank you, choir. We have several announcements this morning. I'll invite Erna and Claire and Joetta to make their way forward. And Aaron too, huh? Okay. I'm going to have Erna go first. I will just announce also that the next partner church lunch is going to be March 12th, and please sign up to bring soup and bread outside. Erna?
Hello, I'm here as chair of Safe Congregation. Some of you may remember in late 2019, December and January, Andy Devlin had sent us some manifestos that included threatening language so that we were able to receive a 5-year order of protection. And his family was also contacted. Every one of the Unitarian churches had received these messages, and I think this is something that has happened off and on for years. There are some issues of stability. And so the order of protection is still in place, but as of this morning, we learned, yesterday we learned that Heritage had received another manifesto, which Bill, the minister, has read. There is no threatening language in it, but it involves the same kind of language about how Unitarians could work with him to help improve the world. And this morning we found we also have this manifesto. So we will be working with the other churches in the area because sending this message was a violation of his court order. And we're not sensing, because the message was not threatening, we just want to alert everyone that we're being, Kathy, who's responsible for building safety, and I, and Safe Congregation, and others, being more vigilant about doors being locked when you're here. I come on Wednesdays for the meditation group, for example. His picture, Andy's picture, Devlin's picture, is at the front door in the drawer so that you will see what he looks like if he wants to come in. And this is just a heads up to be vigilant. He has no known history that I know of any violence. It's just sometimes these threatening messages, but we need to be cautious in these times. So that's my message for all of you. If you have questions, Alice and I've been, Reverend Alice and I, and Kathy, Dev, and then also Melissa as president of the board, have more information. We'll be at coffee hour. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel we are in good hands. Appreciate that. I also want to point out, you should have seen this in the e-news, but next week is really special. We have a LGBTQ youth choir coming from Washington, D.C., and they're going to be providing a service for us. It's going to be crowded, so get here early, park in the German school, and yeah, I hope you come and join that. Let's see, Claire.
Hi, everybody. I am Claire Wagner. I've been on the communications team for a long time, and I didn't count. I have a few requests. You've seen the last couple Sundays, we've had people come up and ask for some volunteer time. I have one simple need that could be done by anybody here or at home on Sundays, and that is to be what we call our online usher. Monica and Joetta do them most Sundays, and they could use a break. And it is pretty simple. It just means logging into the YouTube stream of our service and welcoming people. And if there are any joys or concerns, copying them, we have instructions, into a message box on the church Facebook page so that it can be seen up here. That's about it. But really, think about it, please. We have a lot of committee chairs and a lot of activity here, and I don't keep up with what your pages say on our website. So if anybody has, your committee, please review it in the next few weeks. Email me some updated copy. I'm happy to do it. It would just help me if you looked at it and said, we don't do this anymore, let's change it. And we don't, I think for lack of time, with our concentration on technology, we haven't been marketing or publicizing St. John's as much as we used to. If anybody has any desires in that area, come see me. Let's do a little bit of bragging about what we do. And now I'm putting on my sanctuary and immigration team hat and inviting you to something that we've had in the e-news for several weeks, Global Stews. It is next week, Sunday, at Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church. And lots of St. Johners are heavily involved, especially Mary and John, who are working with the food. We are going to be serving stews representing West Africa, Senegal, Guatemala, Mexico, Bhutan, and El Salvador. Some are meated, some are vegetarian. We have some immigrants helping us to get the spices right and everything. We've invited many, many immigrants across greater Cincinnati. And in addition to just please come and hear from folks. We have some speakers from some of those countries. We could use a few more drivers to help some of the immigrants and help them feel welcome and come dine with us. So if you have an interest and a desire to drive somebody home and back and then to eat, please see me also. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Aaron?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Erin Zoller. We are not in the period of the year where we're quite ready for the sparkly hat. However, I am here for a pre-sparkly hat save the date for the auction. So the save the date for the auction is May 6th. It's a Saturday. It will be in the afternoon, and more details to come with the sparkly hat, but not today. That's all.
May 6th, Joanna. Thank you.
Two things. I'll start with just one clarification that the Article 2 UUA General Assembly Article 2 presentation that I'm going to do is here in the sanctuary and on Zoom. So it's multi-platform. Everyone can participate. And Reverend Alice had said it was in the other room, but it's here at about 12:45. But now my real reason for being here is to tell you that the team, the awesome team that has been coordinating and working on the capital campaign for these many months, is here to tell you what our as of today final number is. Are you ready? For the capital campaign, $1,028,458.36. Amazing, huh? And it's amazing because of the work of so many people. So I'm going to call out all the people who served as stewards and ask you to stand. And everybody just stand and wait. And at the end, we'll clap for everybody. Okay, you ready? If you're here in the room, if you're online, put something in the chat. Okay, Melissa Asman, Debbie Combs, Wanda Crawford, Mary Darner, Tom Darner, Bill Gordon, Marty Harrington, Nancy Henry, Emily Hodges, Sally Larson, Kathy Lothman, Stan Loeb, Melanie Malavia, Prasan Malavia, Jim McDonough, Amy Monson, Nikki Orelman, Rich Overturf, Connie Prairie, Kathy Rentz, Melissa Rowland, Ann Schur, Kathy Schell, Charles Spencer, Greg Terhune, Bo Walkendorf for helping with the PR materials, Claire Wagner for always helping with the PR materials, and the amazing core team that helped make this happen. Bill Lurson, who's away today. He's not here with us, but just picture Bill standing here. Monica Pellman in the back, and Nancy Johnson, our spreadsheet par excellence person, and Matt Cooperthwaite, where are you, Matt? The head of the master planning team, who gave us all guidance and direction along the way. Chris Wagner for help with tracking of payment of pledges. Nancy Greenlee in the office for all that she does to bring in the data and the money. And lastly, Rachel Maxwell, who has been our excellent guidance and trainer, steering the project and the campaign throughout. I am so grateful for all that all these people and those who aren't in the room today have done. Let's hear it for their efforts. Thank you so much.
What a great team. We will skip the next announcement, which was going to be a video, Roberto. We're going to skip that. Please join me in singing hymn 131, Love Will Guide Us. Please rise in body or spirit. These benediction words come from Stephen Charleston on the theme of transformation. Rise up, faithful friends. Wake up, sleepers in the shadows. Wake up to see the bright banners on your horizon. Wake up to see your redemption coming to you, the answer to so many of your prayers, the fulfillment of your dream from long ago. Rise up, faithful friends, to shout the good news to the morning sun. Justice has arrived at last. Mercy has returned. Love has won the day. Rise up, good people of many lands, for this is the moment of change, the time when hope starts to heal and truth begins to speak to every courageous heart. Wake up, rise up, and rejoice. Amen. Blessed be. Go in peace.